Hey there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network. Today we're going to be talking pre-conference play power rankings. So I know some conferences have started, the Big Ten has started, even the Big East has started, but we're going to just throw all that away and we're going to talk about going into the conference play. What are some of these conference power rankings? We're going to go in alphabetical order: ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, and then finally the SEC. We're going to rank them, 1 through 18, 1 through 16, 1 through 11. Got their records on here. So we're just going to talk about all those, where they head going into the conference play. We'll talk about some teams that are on the bubble, some teams that might be in consideration for like a 1 seed. So before diving into it, just be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, turn on the post notifications. Like we said on last week's show, which was our first bracketology show, so be sure to go check that out if you can. But usually Monday shows are ranking based, just with the AP poll going to be coming out and stuff like that. Obviously, it's been a real slow week of college basketball, so it's going to be a little bit off this week. But typically Mondays rankings, Fridays is going to be mostly bracketology talk going into the weekend, and of course previewing the weekend games. And also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's, where you can go check out a bunch of different graphics talking about college basketball and a fun little community on there. All right, enough yip yap. Let's talk about the conference power rankings, starting with the ACC, as I'll pull up the graphic here. I'm not going to dive too deep into all of these teams. Now, I did do a conference power rankings about a month ago. So, it's probably something we'll do every month, just kind of check in. Starting with the ACC, Duke is definitely number 1. They're in position to be a 1 seed. They're 6th at KenPom right now. Their lone loss just came to Texas Tech, where they actually led by 17 in that game, but they have wins over Florida, Michigan State, Kansas, Texas. Duke's a juggernaut. They're fantastic. Definitely the team to beat in the ACC this year. Let's move on and talk about, I have North Carolina above Louisville. This might be a little bit unpopular for some people, but let's just say when Duke, North Carolina, and Louisville are your 3 top teams in the ACC, all is right in the world. This is kind of good to see Louisville back on the map, and North Carolina, obviously struggled last year, but has had some success under Hubert Davis. Louisville is actually favored over North Carolina to win the conference. They're also favored at KenPom right now. They're higher ranked, 13th compared to 22nd. However, I think North Carolina is underrated. I think they're really good. They've picked up some good wins. They just beat Ohio State. They beat Kentucky, obviously, and then they did beat, the big one was Kansas. Their lone loss coming to Michigan State. I understand they haven't really played the toughest schedule in the world, and Louisville's played a much harder schedule, but something about this North Carolina team, that front court, Caleb Wilson, Henry Vasar, looks really good. Louisville is 10-2 compared to North Carolina, 12-1, but Louisville has definitely played a harder schedule. They have notable wins over, they also beat Kentucky, as pretty much a lot of teams have, we'll say, for Kentucky, but Kentucky's going to be a little higher ranked in the SEC than you might think. They also beat Cincinnati. They beat Indiana. They beat Memphis. So no truly elite wins other than, maybe the Kentucky win, if you qualify that. Indiana, good win. Their losses came to Arkansas and Tennessee. However, both were true away games. So Louisville perfectly fine in that 3 spot. Virginia, the 4 spot, definitely just kind of locked into the 4 spot, in my opinion, right now. They're 11-1, 23rd at KenPom. They're only 1 spot below North Carolina. In fact, they have an easier schedule in the ACC, so they're projected to actually win 1 more game, according to KenPom, than North Carolina. But take it as you will. They have decent wins over Northwestern, Texas, Dayton. Their lone loss did come to Butler on a neutral, kind of just a little bit of an outlier, in my opinion. But outside of that, they look like they just have the parts. They kind of fill the notion of, a team that looks like they could make a Final Four. They have all the pieces. They got some bigs, some foreign guys. Really good team is Virginia this year. Don't forget about Virginia when we're talking about the top teams in the ACC. At number 5, I have NC State. I do have them above Clemson and Miami, Cal, SMU. I just think they definitely have by far the highest ceiling out of any of these teams. I know they've suffered some interesting losses, like that neutral site game to Seton Hall, but Seton Hall is just better than we thought. The one that's a little bit concerning was the one against Texas, because I don't think Texas is that fantastic. And they did lose at Auburn. However, Auburn was 50 or maybe 60% from 3 in that game. They just made everything. So their 3-point splits, a little bit of unluckiness there for NC State. And then they did have the home loss to Kansas. However, they did play Kansas with Darren Peterson for what he played, 30-some minutes. Ended up leaving the game with an injury, but they did still get him. They do have wins over Boise State, which is continuing to age much better. They have a win against VCU and a win against Ole Miss. Not the best wins, but haven't really done anything to hurt their resume. However, I just think their ceiling is so much higher than some of these other teams. that we're going to talk about. Next up is Clemson. The always steady Clemson under Brad Brownell. Not the most talented roster in the country, but have picked up. They've done enough where they would be in the tournament if the tournament started today. They have that win against Georgia, which we didn't think was as awesome then as it is now. Georgia is a top 25 team. They also have a win against Cincinnati, which pretty much everyone beats Cincinnati anymore. They did beat South Carolina. The one loss that sticks out was an away loss at Georgetown. That was when Georgetown was looking like a tournament team. Georgetown's not very good anymore, so that one's not going to age as great. And then their losses, they had the game against BYU, which is why I know saying it's a loss, but why I have them ranked higher is kind of odd. But that game against BYU, they looked fantastic, and then just got out AJ Devanced in the second half pretty much, where BYU fought all the way back and won on a buzzer beater. But it was, very, very nice to see Clemson can compete with the likes of BYU on a neutral floor. And they did lose at Alabama. However, they kept it close in that game too. So to me, Clemson just the most steady, fill them into number 6 right now. Miami at number 7. Don't have any elite wins. Their best win is 59th ranked, at least according to KenPom, Ole Miss, which we know Ole Miss isn't great. They did beat Georgetown, though. And then outside of that, their losses came to BYU and Florida. So no harm there. 2 really good teams, top 5 seed teams. Number 8, California. I know this might seem a little bit low for some people. They're actually ranked 60th at KenPom right now. So, a little bit lower. I know there's still some preseason bias in there. They lost the game at Kansas State. That's their lone loss. However, their only win inside the top 120 this season is that UCLA win, which was a semi home game for Cal. And that's a fantastic win. Don't get me wrong. That should end up being a quad 1 win, I would think. But just not enough real elite wins for me. I know 12-1 looks really good, but I couldn't bump them above Miami yet, just because Miami has a little bit of a better collection of overall wins, like we said, with the wins Ole Miss and Georgetown, and then just 2 good losses. And their loss is a little bit better than the loss to Kansas State, who wouldn't be in the tournament right now if the season ended. At number 9, SMU. I've kind of said on here a little bit. I think they're just a little bit they're a little bit fraudulent, in my opinion. Andy Enfield knows how to schedule. He schedules really well, racks up a bunch of quad 2 wins every year. That's exactly what they did last year when they were kind of on the bubble. Probably quad 2 wins this year that they already have. Maybe Murray State. That's not going to get there. Butler, a home game against Butler, which they did win. That's probably quad 2 win. A win at Mississippi State, which isn't really SMU's fault because we thought Mississippi State, I guess we didn't think Mississippi State would suck as much as they do suck. So that'll probably end up being quad 2. A neutral game against Texas A&M. That could be quad 1, could be quad 2, but their losses did come at Vanderbilt, where they kind of got slaughtered, and then a semi-away game to LSU, where LSU got them. So top 9 teams right now. Actually, I'll even move it into the top 10 teams are, definite, they have a good shot of making the NCAA tournament. It's in their own hands. Might not be able to say the same about Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Stanford, Syracuse, the likes of those. But Virginia Tech still in decent position at 11-2. Don't have any fantastic wins, but they do have 4 wins inside the top 100. Those being Providence, Colorado State, South Carolina, George Mason, with the losses coming to 2 very highly thought of mid majors, VCU and St. Mary's. So Virginia Tech really, kind of put in position where if they go 10-8 in the ACC this year, maybe this could be an NCAA tournament team. Next up, Wake Forest, the hardest team to rank, but I think they're just kind of slotted into this 11 spot, in my opinion. I kind of flew through this ACC ranking. It kind of just flowed smoothly, in my opinion. We saw them compete with Michigan. However, since then, it's been kind of ugly. They lost a home game to Vanderbilt, most recently by 31. So they also have a loss to Oklahoma kind of badly. This was also on their home floor. So, Steve Forbes definitely on the hot seat as of now. They were preseason ranked 49th, was Wake Forest, and they are now down to 58. So they've actually gotten worse, as according to KenPom. Notre Dame up at number 12. This team could make the NCAA tournament, in my opinion. I think this team's a little better than we think. They haven't really pulled off the close wins yet. However, they did just lose a home game to Purdue Fort Wayne. Without that game, I would probably have had them slotted in the 10 spot, maybe even probably ahead of Virginia Tech. Because their only losses coming into that was, in a away game at Ohio State, where Notre Dame should have won that game. Ohio State had a last-second little runner there, and then a neutral site loss to Kansas and a neutral site loss to Houston. No no harm there. They beat TCU, they beat Missouri, they beat Rutgers, which isn't great, but still decent wins. And then you lose a home game to Purdue Fort Wayne. Come on, Micah Shrewsbury, we can't lose that home game. They would have been in decent position, but yeah. Notre Dame slotted in at number 12, and then Stanford at number 13 at 11-2. No elite wins. They lost a home game to UNLV and a home game to Seattle. Their best win is against Colorado. They did beat Colorado. They also beat St. Louis, which is actually St. Louis is their best win. St. Louis is an at-large caliber team right now. Minnesota they also beat, but losses coming to Seattle and UNLV. Both teams outside the top 100. Both teams better than you might think, but outside the top 100 has Stanford slotted at 13. I love Kyle Smith. I think within a couple of years, Kyle Smith will get Stanford to the NCAA tournament. At 14, Syracuse. Red Autry definitely on the blazing hot seat. They just lost a home game to Hofstra, which you cannot do. They beat Tennessee in the remember at home, like after the Players Air Festival, where they went 0-3 to Houston, but they competed. Kansas and Iowa State. So gauntlet of a schedule. You lose all three of them. Then you beat Tennessee at home, and it's like, okay, maybe this team is solid. You beat St. Joe's, which St. Joe's is not good this year, and then you lose a home game to Hofstra. It's like, really? So Tennessee is obviously their best win, 15th ranked team in the country, according to KenPom. Their next best win outside of that is 196th ranked St. Joseph's. Not good. Not good for Red Autry. They're down at 14. Pitt down at 15. These bottom four, I'm just going to blaze through. I'm not going to talk about their resumes. Pitt, they beat Ohio State. Outside of that, not good. Florida State is terrible. They're getting worse and worse. Georgia Tech is, I've said on record on here that I think Georgia Tech's the worst Power 5 team. However, I have them ranked ahead of Boston College now because Boston College is just really bad too. Both teams are really bad. Don't let the 9-4 record fool you. For Georgia Tech, that team has not beaten anyone, and they did compete with Georgia, but outside of that team is not very good. All right, let's keep it going here. Let's talk about the Big 12. So, I'm not going to talk as much about, like, it's going to be a little bit, I'm not going to talk as much as, like, the worst teams in the conference. However, the Big 12 is probably the deepest league as of right now. But, like, even when we get to the Big 10, like, I'm not going to talk much about Rutgers and Penn State in trying to get through these a little bit quicker. But, all right, moving into the Big 12, number one, I think it's got to be Arizona. They're number one team in the AP poll. Well, let me just say, I think the Big 12 is definitely the best conference in college basketball. I don't think that's a hot take at all. These top six are like legit Final Four threats. And then you got depth as well. The rest of the league has performed better than expected, other than, probably the bottom three and probably Kansas State as well. But outside of that, this conference is really good. I got Arizona at number one. What can you say about them? They've played a gauntlet of a schedule and they're 12-0. So yeah, number two at KenPom right now, just behind Michigan. But Arizona is absolutely awesome, as is Iowa State. They're also 12-0. Losing Keyshawn Gilbert didn't seem to really kill them. Josh Jefferson is a first-team All-American if the season ended right now. Do not sleep on Josh Jefferson. A lot of hype will go to Milan Momcilovic and Tamin Lipsey, as they should. They're both awesome. Josh Jefferson is the best player on this team and is a legit threat to maybe win the National Player of the Year that people aren't talking about. I swear if Josh Jefferson was putting up his stats right now and he was a freshman, just because of this loaded freshman class, and that's been the story, he would definitely be right in the conversation of National Player of the Year. Houston at number 3, they just picked up a big win against Arkansas. What else can you say about them? These top three are solidified in the top 3, and to me, BYU is solidified at number 4. AJ DeBanza and Cam Boozer, that two freshmen battling back and forth to win National Player of the Year is kind of what it seems right now. Throw Yaxel Lendeborg in the conversation. BYU's racked up a bunch of wins against Villanova, Wisconsin, Miami, Dayton, Clemson. No like elite wins, but all top 50 to 60-ish teams. Kansas in at number 5. Kansas and Texas Tech, whichever order you want to throw them in. I think Kansas is the better team right now. I still think Texas Tech has a much higher ceiling. Kansas will say probably has a higher floor, just with a little bit of the the age that they got there, a little bit of the Flory Badunga plus Trey White, and when they get Darren Peterson back, I guess you can maybe say their ceiling can go high. I just think Texas Tech, once they get healthy with JT Toppin and Christian Anderson, who are all Americans, has a little bit of a higher ceiling, but I got Texas Tech just slightly below Kansas right now. Baylor has been 7 on my power rankings forever. It just kind of seems that's where they're going to be. They've been fine. They're 9-2. They haven't really beaten anyone awesome, but they've played a decent schedule. They beat Washington, beat Creighton, beat San Diego State, all ranked in between 44 and 52. So no like elite wins, but nothing too horrible. They did lose that game away at Memphis. beat St. John's. The story in the Big 12 is going to be these top 6 teams all season long. You could have, I think your goal for the Big 12 is you got to put definitely 1 in the Final Four. It's definitely realistic to put 2 in the Final Four. The top 3 teams and plus BYU, that is like legit national championship threats. I think Kansas and Texas Tech, legit Final Four threats. I will say it is just so much harder to win 6 games than it is 4 games. I know that seems like it should be obvious, but it really is. Like once you get to the Final Four, it is so much harder to keep going. Like just for example, Alabama a couple of years ago, like, yeah, you were good enough to get to the Final Four, but you were never like a real national championship threat. Sorry to throw shade at random Alabama. I love Alabama, but got Baylor slotted in at number 7, probably a legit try and make the second weekend sort of team, but very unlikely in my opinion. At number 8, I got UCF. Who would have ever thought? So they lost that game to Vanderbilt, the second game of the season where they were down 30, and this game was played at UCF. Then they fought back, ended up losing by 12. Not great. Since then, they've been good. They beat Hofstra. Not everyone can say they beat Hofstra. Pitt lost to Hofstra. Syracuse lost to Hofstra. They beat Hofstra, who's actually 106th ranked at KenPom, so that's a decent win. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Pitt. They beat a number of teams like in the hundreds, so a decent resume, a good scheduling job by Johnny Dawkins, kind of raised that win against Bubble rank a little bit. Quinnipiac, Towson, Mercer, Florida Gulf Coast, Florida Atlantic. I know those don't seem like elite wins. Oakland even. These are all teams that have legit chances to win their respective conferences. So UCF has done a good job scheduling, and they're a pretty solid team. Want to see what they're going to do. They get a home game on January 3rd, which will be Saturday against Kansas. We'll see what they're made of in that one. At number 9, I got Oklahoma State, who's 11-1. They are not highly thought of by the computers at all. In fact, they're 61st at KenPom, projected by KenPom to go 6-12, which is actually lower than TCU and West Virginia, believe it or not. I don't think West Virginia is very good, quite frankly. As you can see, I got them 15th on here. Oklahoma State, not loved by the computers. However, they haven't really done anything wrong. They beat Northwestern. They beat Grand Canyon. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Texas A&M badly as well. Their lone loss did come to the rival, Oklahoma. What is that rivalry even called? I don't even know what that rivalry is called. But that's their lone loss. Outside of that, they've just taken care of business. They beat USF, and they've just kind of looked good. We'll see. We'll see about Oklahoma State. Steve Lett's a great coach. At number 9, I got TCU. TCU lost that opening night game to New Orleans. Since then, they've been good. They beat Florida, Wisconsin. Their other losses, they lost that home game to Notre Dame, which is, we'll see what Notre Dame's going to end up. But if they'd have won that game, you're probably looking at a team that I would have ranked 8th in this one, since they did lose that one at home. That was Notre Dame without Marcus Burton as well. They lost the game to Michigan by 4. They really hung with them. And then the win against Florida and Wisconsin, then 2, not so great losses, home loss to Notre Dame. And obviously that home loss to New Orleans is not good, but really weird resume. I think they're better than a lot of people think they are. Just kind of people just wrote them off after the New Orleans game, which I'm not blaming anyone. I probably did a little bit of the same thing, but they look fine. Next up is Arizona State, a team that is better than I thought they were going to be. Also not liked by the computer, 77th at KenPom, projected to go 6-12. As well by KenPom. They've lost 2 in a row. They lost at UCLA by 13, and then they lost at home to Oregon State. Outside of that, just like TCU, even with the loss against UCLA, let's just throw away the Oregon State game, because Arizona State's a really interesting team to me this season, so we'll talk about them a little bit here. Throw away the Oregon State game that just happened. Where would you rank this team? They lost to Gonzaga at home. No foul there. They lost on the neutral to USC, which was in the Maui championship. Let me remind you, they beat Texas in Maui and then Washington State to make the championship game where they lost to USC. It was a 13-point loss. However, the game was much closer than that. It was like within reach at all times. And then they did have the away loss at UCLA, which you're not expected to lose that game. And like we said, the wins over Texas, Washington State, they also beat Oklahoma, and they beat Oklahoma badly. They beat them by 16, and then they beat Santa Clara. And for those who don't know, Santa Clara is a top 60 team. They're 57th at KenPom right now. Santa Clara is really good. They beat them, so you're 9-3 with 3 quad 1 losses and a couple of potential quad 1/quad 2 wins. Where would you rank this team? And then you have a home game to Oregon State, and this is not a good Oregon State team, and you lose to them. That's kind of the Bobby Hurley way, in my opinion. Bobby Hurley is definitely on the hot seat. I've said before that I think if you were to give me place a paycheck on one coach that is coaching this year that won't be coaching next year, I would have said Bobby Hurley. Then he kind of coached himself like into a decent position, and then you lose to Oregon State at home. So, yeah, I don't know what to say about Arizona State. They still have a chance at an at-large, but I think if they get an at-large, they'll be looking for a new coach. Unfortunately, same goes for Kansas State. Kansas State has a bunch of NIL money. They've paid PJ Haggerty a ton of money, and PJ Haggerty's been awesome. However, everyone else around him is not very good, and PJ Haggerty's so good that the floor raises. They're still in the conversation to make the NCAA tournament, but we'll have to go at least probably 500 in the Big 12 play. Up next is Colorado. Colorado just lost a home game to Northern Colorado, which actually isn't as bad of a loss as you think. Northern Colorado is really good. To me, they are definitely the favorite in the Big Sky this year. I think they've got some offensive firepower, but still, you can't lose a home game to Northern Colorado. They also lost to Stanford, Colorado State. They have some decent wins: Providence, San Francisco, Washington, but just towards the bottom of the Big 12. Cincinnati, I've hated on Cincinnati pretty much all season long, so I'm not going to ramble on them. Just a complete abomination of a coaching job, in my opinion. Let's talk about their last 5 games. You lose a semi-home game where you led by 9 to Louisville, end up losing that game by 10. So no, nothing bad there. You beat 354th ranked NJIT. Congrats. You lose a home game to Eastern Michigan. That's going to be a quad 4 loss. You win a home game against Tarleton State. That's not going to, boost anything. You lose an away game in the crosstown shootout to 101st ranked Xavier. You lose at Georgia, or a semi-away game to Georgia that you actually were tied at the half and end up losing the game by 19. You beat 276th ranked Alabama State, and then you are down 38-18 at the half against Clemson and end up fighting back, but still losing the game. That's Cincinnati's season this year. They are not good. I wanted to put them below West Virginia. I just don't think West Virginia is very good either. However, I do think West Virginia has a much brighter future than Cincinnati. However, Cincinnati's future is going to look brighter once Wes Miller is not there. Unfortunately, I hate hating on a coach, but it's just not working out there. West Virginia has been fine. They almost beat Ohio State, but they beat Pittsburgh, who's ranked 90th according to KenPom, and they beat them badly. I don't think Pittsburgh is very good at all. Outside of that, their best win is 221st ranked Campbell, and their next best win after that is 302nd ranked Mount St. Mary's. They've beaten no one. They lost to Wake Forest, Xavier, Clemson, Ohio State. I just don't think this team can play up at all against good competition. So that's why I got them 15th. And then Utah, first season under Alex Jensen, just slotted into that last spot, 123rd at KenPom. Going to be a little bit of a rebuild there for Alex Jensen. All right, let's talk about the Big East next, starting with UConn, definitely your best team by far in the Big East. The Big East, just as an overview, not good. Not good at all this year. 3-bid/4 bid Big East. I'm confident saying 3 will get in. I'm not so confident saying 4 can get in. I could see a scenario where maybe 5 gets in, but yeah, not a good conference. But let's talk about UConn. Let's give UConn their love because they're carrying this conference. Their only loss at home to Arizona, which they were, shorthanded without Terrace Reed, Braylon Mullins. Everyone knows that. They won that semi-home game against BYU, which is 11th in the country. They beat 9th ranked in the country, Illinois. At least these rankings are according to KenPom. And they went to Allen Fieldhouse and won, which no one does. They won a semi-home game against Florida. They beat Texas. They've already beaten Butler and DePaul in Big East play. Yeah, UConn's a juggernaut, an absolute, definite looking for a 1 seed and maybe the number 1 overall seed because they might not lose a game in the Big East this year. Up next is St. John's. I know they're 8-4. They have played a harder schedule. They don't have any bad losses. They came against 17th ranked Alabama, 3rd ranked Iowa State. People forget, a lot of people have written off St. John's, and obviously they're not near as good as we thought they were going to be, but Iowa State is like one of the best teams in the country, would be a 1 seed right now, and they lost by 1 to Iowa State. That was neck and neck the entire way. So St. John's, they have the potential to play up. They lost to Auburn on a neutral in the Players era, and then they also just lost that game to Kentucky, obviously. So Auburn and Kentucky have obviously underperformed a little bit this year, so losing to those two. But Iowa State and Alabama, no harm there. They've beaten Baylor. They beat Ole Miss. Just slotted in at number 2 because the rest of the league isn't great. They're 20th at KenPom. Villanova is 25th, who I have next. They're 10-2. No truly elite wins. Best win is a semi-away game in overtime against Wisconsin. Wisconsin isn't as good as we thought they were going to be. Next best win is Pitt at home, which is 90th ranked Pitt. That's quad 2/quad 3-ish, depending on where Pitt finishes. Then they did win the game at Seton Hall to start Big East play, which is going to very much help, which is why I ended up flipping Villanova and Seton Hall. I got Seton Hall at number 4. They've been fantastic. Their lone loss is coming to Villanova, as we just mentioned, and USC in the in the semifinals of the Maui Invitational. They beat NC State before losing to USC, and NC State's 27th in the country. Beat Kansas State at Kansas State. That could end up being a quad 1 win, and then they won at Providence. That could also maybe end up being a quad 1 win. Right now, it would be very close, kind of on the border of quad 1 and quad 2. So Seton Hall slotted in at number 4. And then how about Butler at number 5? Butler is kind of fun this year. Michael Ajayi is absolutely awesome. The transfer from Gonzaga, who couldn't get into the lineup at Gonzaga. He's transferred, and he's been fantastic. A double-double machine. Beat Providence, Northwestern, Virginia, South Carolina. So solid wins. Their losses came to SMU, Boise State. We'll see if those two are tournament teams. And an away game at UConn, which you're definitely expected to lose in that one. Number 6 is Creighton. It's kind of weird, but Creighton isn't dead for an at-large. They're actually the 4th-ranked team via KenPom. KenPom has it UConn 1, St. John's 2, no surprise, Villanova 3, no surprise, and then actually Creighton 4. I've watched a lot of Creighton games this year. They're not great, but they've picked up some decent wins. Like they just won at Xavier by 41, which really boosts their rankings a little bit. Then they won at home against Marquette. Everyone beats Marquette. They're horrible. And Oregon is also not good this year. They won on a neutral site game against them in the Players Era Festival. And then their losses haven't been awful, but they lost a home game to Kansas State, which you can't really do. They lost at Nebraska badly. Then they lost neutral site games to Iowa State and Baylor, also losing at Gonzaga badly. So this team is definitely on the outside looking in right now, but someone's got to win games in the Big East. I think your top 4 are solidified: UConn, St. John's, Villanova, Seton Hall. UConn's definitely number 1. After that, you can go St. John's, Villanova, Seton Hall, or in pretty much any order. And then I think it's Butler and Creighton, who will be somewhat on the bubble. Next up would be Xavier. Xavier is overperforming, in my opinion. And that's a credit to Richard Pitino and the players there. Credit to Trey Carroll, who had a fantastic game against Cincinnati. I thought this team was going to be awful and really fight for last place in the Big East, but that just kind of tells you what coaching can do and what kind of a brand can do in a home court environment. Their home court environment is really good. They beat West Virginia, beat Cincinnati, as we mentioned, and they won at Georgetown, where Ed Cooley ended up throwing a water bottle and hit a kid. That was that game. So Xavier just kind of, they also did lose that game to Creighton, like we just mentioned, at home by 41. So got to slot them a little bit lower than Creighton. But outside of that, I don't think there's really a road for them to make the NCAA tournament. They just don't have enough talent, but we'll see. Providence up next. Providence was picked 4th in the Big East preseason poll, according to the coaches in there, and they're 7-6, now projected to go 8-12 in the Big East. They're 0-2 to start Big East play, 74th at KenPom. Just like I talked bad about Wes Miller, I'll talk bad about Kim English. I don't think he is a very good basketball coach, unfortunately. He lost that neutral site game to Virginia Tech. They went to Colorado and got beat. That's 69th ranked Virginia Tech and 84th ranked Colorado. That's not good. You lost games against Florida and Wisconsin in the ESPN Events Invitational. No, nothing real bad there. They lost at Butler in a game where they looked decent, but Butler also looked good. And then you lose at home to Seton Hall. Yeah, not a good start for Providence. Up next is Georgetown. I'm not even going to really talk about these 3 teams because Georgetown has just fallen off a cliff. They're 102nd at KenPom right now. They are 1-1 in the Big East. However, their win came against Marquette, which everyone beats Marquette. Marquette I have slotted at number 10 and DePaul at number 11. You can make the argument DePaul's better than Marquette. Both teams just I thought DePaul was maybe going to turn a little bit of a corner this year, but they're 119th at KenPom, and Marquette's 114th at KenPom. When's the last time you've seen Marquette there? Yikes. Get in the transfer portal, Shaka Smart. All right, let's talk about the Big Ten. A little bit more fun to talk about because this conference is definitely better than the Big East. Now they have more teams, so you can make the little argument there. But number 1 is definitely Michigan. They're number 1 at KenPom by a mile. This team is an absolute juggernaut. Would be your number 1 overall seed, in my opinion, if the season ended today. Neutral site win against number 4 ranked Gonzaga at KenPom by 40. Yeah, that's pretty good. They had neutral site game in the Players Era Festival against Auburn by 30, and San Diego State on a neutral by 40 as well. We talked about the games against Wake Forest and TCU, where they kind of escaped, and then they've just been beating everyone's brains in. They beat Villanova by 28, where they actually led by 30 at the half, beat Maryland by 18. What can you say about Michigan? The Axel Lendeborg National Player of the Year contender, best front court in the entire country. In my opinion, Michigan, Arizona, UNC, and Florida, your 4 best front courts in the country. Put them in any order you want, but I'm going to go with Michigan right now just because of what they've done. Maybe Arizona is right there as well, but they're just absolutely awesome. What else can you say about them? Feel bad I'm not talking a ton about these awesome teams because it's like, what else can you say? They're just really, really good. We'll talk about them enough throughout the year. Purdue, we haven't really talked too much, or, we've talked about them, but a lot of people just kind of written them off after that home loss to Iowa State by 23. They're still really good. They won at Alabama by 7 early in the season. They beat Akron and Memphis, 2 really good, mid-majors. They won that neutral site game by 30 against Texas Tech. They just won a semi-home game against Auburn by 28. Don't forget about Purdue. They're a legit national championship threat. Up next is Michigan State, who's 11-1. Big Ten play has started, by the way. So just like the Big East has a couple conference records here as Michigan State. Also 2-0 on the season. Their lone loss, or 2-0 in Big Ten play. Their lone loss on the season came at home to Duke. Duke, obviously fantastic. They have some good wins. They beat Iowa pretty badly. They beat, they beat North Carolina. They beat Arkansas. They beat Kentucky. That's pretty good. Number 4 is Nebraska. Nebraska is up to 24th at KenPom, even with that preseason bias included. 12-0 on the season, one of the few undefeated teams remaining. Wins again at Illinois, home win against Wisconsin. They beat Creighton. They beat Kansas State, New Mexico, Oklahoma. They also have a pretty good resume. The computers don't like them as much because of the preseason bias and because, I know KenPom's preseason bias does include like program rank, like your history of your program. In Nebraska's history of the program, they haven't won a game in the NCAA tournament ever. It looks like they're trending towards maybe their first win this season. I don't want to jinx them because I would love to see them get it done, but got them solidified in there at number 4. At number 5, I got Illinois, who we mentioned Nebraska did beat. Illinois is kind of just a weird team. I don't think they're as good as I thought they were going to be. I thought it was going to be Purdue, Michigan, and then Illinois, that was the order I would have picked. And then, Michigan State's just better than a lot of people thought just because Tom Izzo's awesome and it's Michigan State and they're always awesome. But Illinois kind of slotting down a little bit for me. Iowa, first year under Ben McCullum, looks really good. They had that blowout loss against Michigan State where it kind of looked like men versus boys. And then we thought maybe that'll be the same thing against Iowa State. And then they competed with Iowa State at Hilton. Ended up losing the game by 4, but really showed that they can compete with some high-end talent. They haven't really beaten anyone too awesome. They beat Xavier, beat Ole Miss, beat Grand Canyon, beat Maryland. So, right around the 100 ranks. So I'm going to need to pick up some wins in Big Ten play, but the computers do really like Iowa because they're really well coached. Up next, USC hasn't done anything wrong. They're 12-1. Rodney Rice is out for the season, unfortunately. He was playing like an all Big Ten player. Their lone loss came at home to Washington, where Washington was down huge and fought all the way back and ended up beating them. But USC, they won the Maui Invitational, beat Boise, beat Seton Hall, beat Arizona State, beat Oregon. Good team, definitely in the NCAA tournament if it started today. Up next, UCLA, been disappointing. Donovan Dent has definitely been disappointing. They don't have any truly elite wins. They did win at Washington, which should be a quad 1 win. They won at home against Oregon, which Oregon isn't very good, and then they won at home against Arizona State, and that's pretty much it. Outside of that, their best non-conference win was Eastern Washington or Pepperdine, depending on where you're looking at. But they lost the game against Cal. They lost Arizona and Gonzaga, which most teams will. But the home semi-away loss at Cal is kind of what's holding them back right now, along with not having a elite win. At number 9, I got Ohio State. Really struggled with who to slot in this number 9 spot. Could be Ohio State, could be Indiana, could be Washington, could be Wisconsin. That's what this is the order I ended up going in. Ohio State is 34th at KenPom. They're 9-3 on the season. They are definitely the more talented than Indiana, Washington, and Wisconsin. However, I think they're a little bit more poorly coached. They lost an away game to Pitt. Pitt is not good. They lost at home to Illinois, where Bruce Thornton went off. Your best player goes off, and you can't, even really have a chance to win that game. Your best player shows why he's your best player, and it was still just Illinois was better than you. It's that's concerning. Then they lost the game to North Carolina with some late game, mishaps. They also had late game mishaps against Pitt. little bit of coaching issues there at Ohio State, in my opinion, but got them slotted at number 9. They've got talent, should be a tournament team. If they're not, there's going to be real talks about Jake Diebler's future. Number 10, Indiana. I had them slotted a lot higher, and they just seem like they can't quite compete with the big boys yet. The front court with Sam Alexis, Reed Bailey. Once they played against Louisville, just got outmatched. Louisville just knocked down shots against them, just were better at Indiana's game than Indiana was. Both teams shoot a lot of threes. Then that away game against Kentucky, where Kentucky was really struggling and just kind of bullied them down low. A little bit concerned about Indiana going into Big Ten play with, a little bit of their lack of a front court. Tucker DeVries and Lamar Wilkerson can only do so much from behind the arc, but got Indiana slotted at number 10. I think if you're an Indiana fan, you're expecting to make the NCAA tournament this year after the start that you've had. Big Ten should get 10, 11, 12 bids. So I would have Indiana in as of now. Washington up next at number 11. Washington, not a lot of people talking about him. Hans Steinbeck is absolutely fantastic. He's starting to get a lot of hype around. I know John Rothstein's been really high on him. He's a really good basketball player. They have some decent wins. They beat USC. They beat Nevada. Maybe not as decent wins as I thought, but you can see the upside, especially with Steinbach. He looks really good. They lost an away game at Seattle, but Seattle's decent. This is kind of just the mush of the Big Ten, in my opinion. I think it's definitely Ohio State or Indiana, and then at number 9 and 10, and then Washington and Wisconsin, whichever order you want to put them in after that. Wisconsin has been disappointing. I thought this team was going to be really good. They've gotten blown out in a couple games. They lost at Nebraska by 30. They lost to BYU by 28. They lost to TCU, but they did beat Providence, beat Northwestern. Marquette, everyone beats Marquette, but yeah, Wisconsin just a little bit disappointing. I think Greg Gard can get it figured out, but we'll see. Up next, Northwestern, also a little bit disappointing in my opinion. Best win is against South Carolina. That's not going to move the needle too much. And an away game at DePaul. Outside of that, all their top 60 teams that they've played, they have lost to. So, Northwestern not looking like a tournament team. Oregon has been not good at all. I talked about it in the preseason. It's just like the roster construction. It's like if everything goes right, they could be fine. But they're one Jackson Shellstad or Nate Biddle rolled ankle away from this season falling off a cliff. And Jackson Shellstad was hurt to start the season, and they've dealt with some injuries along the way. And I know KJ Evans has been dealing with a little bit of something too, and they have not beaten anyone. Their best win is 104th ranked Hawaii, and they only beat them by 1. They have played a really hard schedule. They've played 6 teams inside the top 52. They've lost every single one of them, so no really good wins. Maryland up next has also been really disappointing. I thought this team was going to be fine with Farrell. I know Farrell Payne got hurt for a little bit, and Solomon Washington has been in and out of the lineup. But I thought this team was going to be able to compete. They've beaten nobody. Their best win is 104. Well, they beat Marquette. Everyone beats Marquette. And that kind of got the hype up for this Maryland team. And then since then, it just hasn't been very good. Minnesota slotted in at 16. I know they beat Indiana, but this is definitely to me, a bottom 3 team in the Big Ten. Penn State up next. They've kind of showed, we talked about it a while ago, where they were 7-1 at one point. I'm like, wait till they play good competition. This team's not very good. And then Rutgers is also just awful. Got them slotted in at number 18 there. All right, last one we will talk about is the SEC, and I'm glad I saved this one for last because I have no idea how to rank this conference. This is by far the hardest conference to rank. Vanderbilt has to be number 1. They're the highest ranked team at KenPom, the only team at KenPom inside the top 10 for the SEC. They're 12-0, 8th in the country, would probably be a 2 or 3 seed. Right now, we talked about that away win at UCF, which is looking like a quad 1 win. They won neutral site games against St. Mary's. VCU, they won at home against SMU. Away games at Wake Forest by 31 and at Memphis. So it's not like they've played an easy schedule. They've just beaten everyone. They're fantastic. Mark Byington is an up-and-coming star. This is the year of Vanderbilt athletics. Mark Byington, I hate to be negative about this for Vanderbilt, but I would be shocked if he's there in 2 or 3 years with, the uncertainties. I know I talked about North Carolina being good, and Hubert Davis has kind of coached himself off the hot seat, but with, this is a credit to Vanderbilt and a credit to Mark Byington, but I would not be shocked if Mark Byington is at a blue blood program within a couple of years, just because he is that good of a basketball coach. And then the health issues with Bill Self, you never know. But I hope Bill Self sticks around forever because he's great for the sport, but Mark Byington will be a very highly thought of coach going forward. Speaking of highly thought of coaches, Alabama at number 2. I think you just got to kind of slot them there, just given what they've done. They won the game at St. John's. They won the semi-away game against Illinois, beat Clemson. They beat USF. Their lone losses are against top 5 teams. So I'm going to respect a team that is scheduled an absolute gauntlet. They lost at home to Purdue, lost on a neutral at Gonzaga, and they lost a semi-home game to Arizona. They actually led in that game, then ended up getting drilled in the second half. Arizona was just too good for them. And they've kept it close with all of these games. So got to put Alabama at number 2, in my opinion. Then I got Arkansas at number 3. I've been a little higher on Arkansas than some. They're projected to go 10-8 in the SEC via KenPom. I think this team's good. They lost on that neutral site game to Houston, but they kind of showed some fight, which was kind of not what I really expected. I know that's I don't know if that's rude to say or what. I wasn't expecting them, once they got down huge to Houston, it was like a 13-0 run for Houston. I was like, this team's just going to give up. They're young. They're, I don't know. Maybe it's just John Calipari teams, but then they kind of fought back and made it a game. I was like, that really showed something to me. Ended up losing by 9. Their other losses came to Michigan State and Duke, 2 fantastic programs, obviously. And then they beat, they won at home against Louisville, and then they won that neutral site game against Texas Tech. I think this team is good. I think they're going to go better than 10-8 in the SEC. Up next is Florida. I really contemplated what to do with Florida. I wanted to put them almost as high as number 2. But just looking at their resume, I couldn't quite get there because they still don't have any really good wins. They beat Miami, Florida is their best win on a neutral. They also beat Providence and George Washington. But yeah, that's about it. Their 3 of their 4 losses have come to top 7 teams at KenPom: UConn, Duke, Arizona, and then that TCU loss kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But outside of that, it's like you see the potential. You see Tommy Hauck developing into an All-American. I know the ceiling is still high for this Florida team, so got him slotted in there at number 4. Up next is Tennessee at number 5. We haven't really talked that much about Tennessee this season. They had that game against Houston, which they won, and then they lost to Syracuse, and they lost to, losing to Kansas and Illinois, no harm there. Then they did win that home game against Louisville badly. They won 83-62, which was nice. So a win against Houston and Louisville, pretty good resume to start the season. So this is another team, if you were to put them at number 2, I wouldn't hate it, but I got them a little bit lower just because I'm a little bit concerned about just, they're kind of like Oregon. They're one, Jacoby Gillespie rolled ankle away from this kind of turning into a different kind of season, in my opinion. Maybe even Nate Amen. I think Jacoby Gillespie is so much more important than Nate Amen to this team. But even if Nate Amen is still super important, or even Felix Okpara, they got depth in the front court, but you get the point where I'm saying here, they would have to develop some scoring somewhere else. Up next is Kentucky at number 6. Once again, don't really know what to do with them. They won the game against Indiana. They won the game against St. John's. At first, it was like the sky's falling for Kentucky. Kentucky fans are like, all right, it's time. Who's our next coach going to be? I'm like, calm down. And now it's kind of like, all right, now we're, a national championship threat because we're healthy. I don't think they're a national championship threat at all. Jaden Quaintance is fantastic, and they need Jaden Quaintance and Jalen Lowe, obviously, really badly. The team still can't shoot, and St. John's has issues right now, obviously. I think they'll get it figured out, but I think Indiana is just not as good as we thought. I don't mean this to be disrespectful to Kentucky. I still have them ranked 6th. I think they're good. I think they're the 6th best team in the SEC. However, I wouldn't go as far as we're all the way back right now. Let's relax a little bit. They're still highly thought of by the computers, but I'm just going to kind of wait and see on this Kentucky team. I think Mark Pope's a fantastic coach, so I hope Mark Pope can get this figured out. Up next is Georgia. They're 11-1 on the season. Blue Cane is awesome, as is, believe it or not, Kanan Catchings has also been good, which I did not like Kanan Catchings because, he was kind of all over the place with Purdue and then BYU and just couldn't really get into the lineup at BYU. And it was just, I don't know, just kind of rubbed some people the wrong way, but he's actually been good, a threat to really put up some big games. And Blue Cane is one of my all-time, he's a Georgia legend. Build this man a statue. They don't really have any elite wins. They have that game against Cincinnati that they won and then Xavier. Outside of that, they don't have any teams inside the top one. Well, they beat Florida State, who's 109th, but Florida State stinks. But they did win that game at Florida State by 34. So it's you can kind of see it. This team can really score the ball, but I'm still kind of wait and see. Auburn, also another team. It's like, what do you do with them? As you can see, just in the loss column, a lot of teams with a lot of losses. Now, the SEC was by far, maybe the best conference ever last season, but by far the best conference in the sport. So everyone wanted to, kind of schedule them, and all these teams are buying into scheduling hard. So, same thing with Auburn. They beat St. John's, NC State, Oregon, but their losses came to all top 10 teams: Houston, Michigan, Arizona, Purdue. So scheduled a hard schedule. They're 8-4, still fine. Would be in the NCAA tournament. This is one that I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb on. This one's going to be a little higher than most. I was higher on them in the preseason than most. Is Oklahoma. They looked really bad to start the season. I'm like, this team cannot guard anybody. Since then, they've been fine. So they lost the game against Gonzaga in night 2 of the season, or their second game of the season, excuse me. They lost that game by 15. Then they lost on a neutral to Nebraska, and it was like, oh, the sky's falling. Nebraska, you can't lose to Nebraska. Nebraska's awesome, so that's going to age even better. They only lost that game by 6. Since then, they've beaten Marquette, which everyone beats Marquette, like I keep saying. They've won at Wake Forest by 18. They won a neutral site game against their rival, Oklahoma State, who I think is a legit bubble team. Then they did lose the game to Arizona State, but they've picked up some decent wins, so I'm going to go with them at number 9. LSU, I got them at number 10. I've kind of just been saying this for a while. I think they're the most fraudulent team in the entire country. They were 21st at KenPom at one point. I'm like, this is the most computer tricker situation I've ever seen. They're now down to 40, so they're still fine. I think they're going to be on the bubble, but their best win, they beat SMU. They won a semi-home game against SMU, who's 40th. Outside of that, your next best win is 119th ranked DePaul. They haven't beaten anyone, in my opinion. They went to overtime with Boston College, and I think Boston College is terrible, but that SMU win keeps you a little bit optimistic. But yeah, I'm curious to see what this team does come SEC play. KenPom's got them projected to go 9-9. I'll take the under of 9 wins in that one. I think this is like a 6-12, 7-11 team, in my opinion. But I do have them ranked higher than Texas as of now. We'll see. Texas lost that opening night game to Duke. They also competed with UConn for a while at UConn. They lost the home game to Virginia badly by 19. They lost the neutral site game to Arizona State. They beat NC State, but outside of that number 27 ranked NC State win, their best win, 228th ranked Southern out of the SWAC. Outside of that 228th ranked Southern win, 303rd ranked Lemoyne. They have played an incredibly weak schedule. I don't like the makeup of this team, but I don't blame Sean Miller because this is Rodney Terry's guys that a lot of them came back just pretty much for the Texas brand. It's a great brand, obviously, but not feeling too optimistic about them going into. I think they're going to pick off, like, they'll win at home against, say, a Vanderbilt or an Alabama or Florida or something. But outside of that, I think they go like 6-12, 7-11. Missouri has been so disappointing. I was high on this team in the middle of the season. Speaking of not beating anyone, they beat Minnesota. This game was a home game for Missouri. They won against them, so that's their lone top 100 win. They're ranked 99th, so barely a top 100 win. Outside of that, next best win, 225th ranked Southeast Missouri, SEMO. Yeah, you can't do that. They've played against Notre Dame, lost that game. They played against Kansas, lost that game by 20. Played against Illinois on a neutral, lost that game by, this is a game that it was so bad that I have to do quick math, lost that game by 43. So yeah, this Missouri team has been very disappointing. Schedule harder teams, Dennis Gates. What are we doing? You schedule harder teams, you prepare your team a little bit going forward, and they didn't do that. And then once they got to their good competition, they've been getting drilled. So take a page out of the lesson book there. Next up, I got Texas A&M. I wanted to put them higher than Missouri. I don't know what to do with them. They have one top 100 win. It's against Pitt, which Pitt's no good. They also beat Florida State, who's 109th. Outside of that, best one is 211th ranked Montana. They just have worse losses than Missouri. Not losing by as bad, but not as good as Missouri. SMU, UCF, Oklahoma State all should be somewhat towards the bubble. UCF comfortably in right now, but yeah, we'll see about Texas A&M. Next up, Ole Miss, my most disappointing team in the SEC. I thought this team was going to be fine. I didn't like the addition of A.J. Storr because I had watched way too much A.J. Storr last year at Kansas. He looked like he was in the island of misfit toys. It just didn't work. But then, I was a little higher on Ole Miss because I trust Chris Beard with pretty much my life. I think he's one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. He doesn't get it. I know the off-court stuff is what kind of keeps people away from him. And I love the addition of James Scott. I thought that was going to be beautiful. You retain Malik Dia. I'm like, I kind of like this team coming in this year. This is a sneaky good team. they've been bad. They won that game against Memphis, like we mentioned. That game was at home for Ole Miss, so that's not anywhere near a quad one win. Their next best win outside of that is 191st ranked Southern Miss. They only beat them by 4. Their losses came to Iowa, Utah, Miami, St. John's, and NC State. And they haven't beaten anyone that, moves the needle at all. Then Mississippi State has just been terrible. It's Josh Hubbard, then everyone else. And then South Carolina. Lamont Paris, I've been hearing things that he's potentially on the hot seat, which I didn't really know. I know they really struggle for money, but their best win is 191st ranked, first ranked Southern Miss. They won that game in overtime, and that was a home game for South Carolina. I don't know. Lamont Paris showed signs with that 6 seed season a couple years ago. Michi Johnson left for Ohio State, came back. I don't know. It's a weird team. I'm not even gonna talk about them that much. All right. That was a lot of talking, 50 minutes worth of talking. My goodness, sorry that ran long. Thanks to those for sticking with us. We're just going to talk about the upcoming games for this week. We'll go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's nothing great Thursday, and then we're going to come back on Friday, and we're not going to do bracketology this week because nothing really happened, quite frankly. And this week's still a little bit slower with things just developing back into it. But so we'll just probably do a quick podcast and review the weekend. Or preview the weekend, because we have a loaded weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But let's talk about this week. Starting on Monday, a really fun mid-major game. For those who don't follow the MAAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, you should do it. This is one of the most fun leagues in the country, in my opinion. So you got 4 teams towards the top. Marist and Quinnipiac are probably your top 2 teams. And these teams are playing against each other 4 o'clock on ESPN+. Early game will be tipping off in about 4 hours here. I can't wait to watch Marist and Quinnipiac. So you got 4 teams that are kind of going to be competing. Those 2, I think, are your top 2. And then Siena and Iona. It's a really fun league. It's always a really fun conference tournament as well. Quinnipiac just hasn't quite broken through yet. They are always, going into the season, one of the favorites. Marist has also been really good, really fun mid-major game, turned into the MAAC. And then it's just a bunch of bye games. 7 o'clock on Big Ten Plus. McNeese, who should win the Southland, taking on number 2 Michigan. Michigan's favored by 23.5 in that game. Kent State, who's looked really good out of the MAC this year, taking on number 5 Purdue, who's favored by 26.5. Also 7 o'clock on Big Ten Plus. And 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. LIU out of the NEC, the favorite to win the NEC between LIU and Central Connecticut State. They take on number 23 Georgia. Georgia favored by 31.5 in that game. 7 o'clock, ESPN Plus, Lipscomb the favorite in the A-Sun. So we're talking about a lot of conference favorites here, which we kind of like. Like to see these bye games at least. Taking on West Miller's Cincinnati. If Lipscomb is sneaky good, if they were to beat Cincinnati in this game, we might see a coaching change mid-season. Yikes. 7 o'clock, ESPN Plus. Best game of the night, 8 o'clock, ESPN Plus. Feels kind of like a 4-13-ish matchup. 3-14. Yale's too good. I think Yale will be a 12 seed. So second round, 4-seeded Alabama. Maybe they'd be better than that probably. At worst, like a 3 seed right now, but just for the sake of it, 4-seeded Alabama versus 12-seeded Yale in the round of 32 of the NCAA tournament. Wouldn't be played at Alabama, but still a fun matchup. 8 o'clock ESPN Plus, Alabama favored by 17.5. 8 o'clock ESPN Plus, Middle Tennessee State taking on number 8 Houston. Houston favored by 28.5, and then the number 1 team in the country, Arizona hosts South Dakota State. South Dakota State not as good as it's been in the past after losing their coach. 9 o'clock ESPN Plus. Let's talk about Tuesday. Tuesday is definitely definitely a better day. This is just these next 2 graphics are going to be courtesy of the CBS Sports app. I'll give you the lines. I know they're not on here. 7 o'clock ACC Network, Pitt taking on Miami. So we're starting ACC play. Miami favored by 10 in that one on the ACC Network. 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Florida State taking on number 12 North Carolina. North Carolina favored by 15 in that one. I think North Carolina wins by more than 15. That's how low I think of Florida State. And I think just the start of ACC play, North Carolina going to come out just firing. Give me North Carolina to win badly in that one. 7 o'clock FS1, Seton Hall traveling to Marquette. This is weird to say. Seton Hall is going to be somewhat towards the bubble. I think they're going to be, right now they'd be in the tournament, but probably will be around the bubble somewhere-ish. A landmark is now, or what's the word? A landmine is now at Marquette. That's crazy to say they're outside the top 100. As we mentioned, this is kind of just a bad luck situation. It's still Marquette. They still have a good home court environment. But we'll see if people are still showing up after the disaster of this season. But Seton Hall's got to win this game. 7 o'clock FS1. A really good one, 9 o'clock on FS1 following that Seton Hall Marquette game is Butler and Creighton, 5 and 6 in my power rankings. So two teams that have chances to make the NCAA tournament. This game will be played at Creighton. Creighton is favored by 4. I'm not sure if I mentioned Seton Hall is favored by 4 at Marquette. Creighton also favored by 4. 9 o'clock out of the Mountain West, Nevada and Colorado State. Colorado State favored by 5 at home in that one. And the game of the night, in my opinion, is 9 o'clock on the ACC Network. Number 16, Louisville at Cal. Cal with an opportunity for this quad one win. Can they get the job done? This is against a top 3 team in the ACC. Cal's gotten some hype. We will see what Cal can do in this one. Louisville favored by 6 on the road via Ken Pom in that one. 9 o'clock on ESPN2, Notre Dame and Stanford. Two teams still have a chance of making the NCAA tournament. Stanford favored by 1, so that could be a little bit of a toss-up there. 11 o'clock on FS1, New Mexico and Boise State. Boise State needs it. New Mexico also on the bubble. Both teams on the outside looking in my opinion, but are still right there. Boise is favored by 5. Then moving on to Wednesday, our final graphic that we will talk about. Let's start at noon. So this is New Year's Eve, so that's why these games are starting early. We get Wake Forest at NC State. Wake Forest probably doesn't have much of a chance to make an NCAA tournament unless they go crazy deep. NC State would be in right now, in my opinion, based on their computer metrics. NC State is favored by 9 in this one. Don't lose this one, NC State. We saw what Wake Forest can do, but do not lose this one. 2 o'clock on ESPN2, Clemson and Syracuse. Clemson favored by 2 on the road. Clemson is a bubble-ish team. Syracuse is definitely way on the outside looking in, but Red Autry might be coaching for his job. 2 o'clock on the ACC Network, Virginia traveling to Virginia Tech. So rivalry game here. Virginia is ranked 21st in the country. They've been awesome. They would probably be a 5 or 6 seed right now. Virginia Tech right on the bubble, in my opinion. So Virginia Tech with a big spot here to pick up a quad one win. I would think it would stay a quad one win. 2 o'clock on ESPN Plus out of the A10, St. Bonaventure, who's been pretty solid this year, taking on VCU. So let's get some A10 little, there's a potential that there's like a 3-bid A10 this year. I'm not sure it's going to happen. I think we'll get a multi-bid A10 if I had to guess. I think we'll get 2. I think St. Louis is going to be an at-large team, but if St. Louis wins the conference tournament, VCU is going to have to really step up. So this is a big game for VCU. 2 o'clock ESPN Plus. 4 o'clock on the ACC Network, Georgia Tech at Duke. Duke favored by 24 via 10 fun in that game. That will even go a little bit higher once the real betting line comes out. 4 o'clock on ESPN2, start of American play. North Texas, who is solid, taking on Memphis, who was the heavy favorite in the preseason. Memphis needs this one pretty badly. They're going to need to win their conference tournament to get into March Madness this year. So we'll see how good this team is going to be. 5 o'clock on Peacock, number 4, UConn, taking on Xavier. Xavier, like we said, good home court environment, but UConn is just so much more talented. I think UConn gets the job done. They're favored by 13. Memphis is favored by 10, I should mention. Then 8 o'clock on FS1, St. John's heading to Georgetown. Don't lose this game, St. John's. Georgetown's outside the top 100. St. John's needs this game. They are favored by 8 in that matchup. All right, that's it for the week. As we mentioned, we will be back on Friday. There's nothing good on Thursday. There's some mid-major stuff, so if you're into that, we'll be posting it on our Instagram and TikTok. That's a good plug. Go check that out at Bracket Science with 2 S's. But like I said, we're going to be back on Friday to preview the weekend. We're not going to do bracketology this week because not that much is happening. Some things will change. Virginia Tech, like that's going to change some things, especially in the bubble and with Virginia seeding, obviously. But so we're not going to do bracketology. We're just going to preview the weekend. Should be hopefully like a 20-minute show. I know we're running up on like an hour here. This is usually not how long it goes. This is kind of a special show just because we're around Christmas time and not a lot's going on. But be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and come back to watch more of the show. Comment your thoughts below on some of the power rankings. Kindly, of course, very kindly, as everyone always does. We've built a great community here, so I appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you stuck with us through an hour, turn on those post notifications, and we will talk to you again on Friday. Till then, take care.